First story. After my wife survived cancer and found a new life, she told me she didn't love me anymore and walked away from our marriage, leaving me to question what went wrong. My life has always been a juggling act, but this last year threw me into a whirlwind I never imagined. My wife and I have been together for 3 years, and for the most part, I thought we had a solid foundation. Less than a year into our relationship, she became pregnant, and soon, we were the proud but overwhelmed parents of twins. Those 2 little girls are my entire world, and no matter what else has happened, being their dad is the one thing I'd never change. They're the reason I've kept going. Our relationship faced its first major test shortly after the twins arrived. My wife was diagnosed with a rare form of blood cancer, a devastating blow that turned our lives upside down. On top of caring for newborn twins, we now had to navigate the relentless grind of cancer treatments. It was like trying to balance on a tightrope with no safety net. We didn't have any family support, no village to lean on, and since we live in a rural area, she often felt isolated. I was trying to keep everything afloat: work, parenting, household responsibilities, and supporting my wife through her illness. I'll admit I wasn't perfect. I fell short in places I didn't want to, but I was always faithful, and I never stopped trying. I did everything I could to make her life easier. I bought her a reliable SUV, even though it strained our finances. My boss let her work remotely so she could earn an income without leaving home. I tried to create a life where we could thrive despite our circumstances, but no matter how hard I worked, it didn't feel like enough. She grew increasingly frustrated with me, believing I was living my best life, while she was stuck in a cycle of monotony and illness. I wasn't living my best life, I was hanging on by a thread, but her perspective had shifted. As her health improved, so did her restlessness. She started going to raves, something I supported at first. I figured it was her way of reclaiming some happiness, and I stayed home with the kids while she drove 2 hours to Atlanta for these events. But soon, it became an obsession. The music, the people, the escape, it all seemed to give her something I couldn't. Meanwhile, I was stuck in what she saw as the mundane reality of small-town life. We fought more and connected less. She started accusing me of being controlling, of stifling her independence, even though I was the one encouraging her to find outlets. It felt like she was rewriting the story of who I was in her mind, and I didn't recognize the person she thought I'd become. Her resentment grew, and so did mine. I tried to hold on, believing that we just needed to push through this rough patch, but it was like we were speaking different languages. Every fight we had cut deeper, and the wounds didn't heal. One night, during a particularly brutal argument, I snapped. She told me I made her miserable, that the family would be better off without me. In a moment of pure frustration, I punched the drywall, twice. I know it was wrong. It was a low point for me, and I've never been proud of it. But she used that moment to paint me as inherently violent, something I know in my heart I am not. Every disagreement after that became an opportunity for her to throw that incident in my face. I started feeling like I was losing not just her, but the version of myself I used to be. The chemo treatments were working, and she was officially in remission, a cause for celebration. But it didn't fix the cracks in our marriage. She lost weight and gained confidence, but her emotional distance grew. She'd ignore me for weeks, then accuse me of not paying enough attention to her. I couldn't win. The breaking point came after a text I sent her one sleepless night. I'd just returned from a work trip, and she'd made another comment about how I wasn't on her level anymore. It gutted me. I wrote her a long message, pouring out my frustrations and fears, begging her to meet me halfway. The tone of the text was harsher than I intended, and I immediately regretted it. The next morning, she read it and told me she was done. She said she needed to leave for her safety, citing the drywall incident as the justification. That was the moment I realized I couldn't fight for us anymore. She'd already made up her mind. Over the next few weeks, she started taking steps to unravel our life together. First, she took the kids to her friend's house. Then she told me outright that she didn't love me anymore. By Thanksgiving, it was official. Our marriage was over. She promised not to keep the kids from me and assured me she wouldn't badmouth me to them, but those felt like hollow consolations. I sat alone that day, staring at the empty space where our life together used to be. It hit me like a ton of bricks. Everything we built, every happy memory we shared, was gone. Now I'm picking up the pieces. I'm trying to focus on what matters, my daughters, and working through the pain with the help of therapy. She's an incredible mother, and I'll always respect her for that, but I can't shake the feeling that I failed her and our family. Whether or not she's been seeing someone else isn't the point anymore. What hurts the most is knowing that we let something so beautiful slip through our fingers. If you've made it this far, thanks for listening to my story. It's painful to share, but somehow it helps to know someone out there understands. For now, all I can do is move forward, one day at a time. Second story, my boyfriend confessed to cheating 10 years ago. After I pushed him to tell the truth, now I'm struggling to process his secret and what it means for our future. I've been with my boyfriend, let's call him Mike, for almost 12 years now, just under a month until our anniversary. We've had a long and, for the most part, fulfilling relationship. We met when we were both 19 at a bar. It was one of those chance encounters where we just clicked. For 7 years, we were in a long-distance relationship while I finished university. After I graduated, I moved in with him, and we've lived together ever since. Throughout it all, we've been solid. Our bond only grew stronger as we navigated the ups and downs of life, and we both knew we were building something that could last. But even with all the love and history we share, I never really saw myself getting married. Part of it was because my dad had an affair that completely wrecked our family around the time I was finishing school. It left me with some deep-rooted issues with commitment. I couldn't imagine tying myself to someone forever after watching everything fall apart so violently in my own family. Still, we've been talking about the future more lately. Marriage and starting a family were no longer distant dreams. They were feeling more and more like the next logical step for us. We were on the same page, and for once, I thought maybe I was ready. Then last night, things changed. We were sitting in bed, just unwinding, watching TV. The characters on screen started talking about cheating, wondering if they'd be better off knowing or not knowing if their partner had strayed. It's the kind of conversation we usually have. We're good at communicating. So I asked him, "Do you ever worry about me cheating on you? Is that something that ever crosses your mind?" He hugged me tight and said, "No, I trust you. You love me too much." But in that moment, something shifted in me. I could feel a change in the air. He held me a little closer, but then I noticed something strange. His heart was racing. I could feel it against me. So I pointed it out, asking him if he was okay. The moment I said that, I could see the tension build in his face. He started acting weird, like he was stressed out. I asked him what was wrong, and he told me that he didn't want to start a fight or make me angry. He said me noticing his racing heart had made him more anxious. The moment he said, "I don't want to lose you over this," I felt a wave of panic wash over me. It hit me like a ton of bricks. I started to get this overwhelming feeling that something had happened, something he wasn't telling me. So I kept pressing. I had to know. I told him that if something had happened in the past, he needed to tell me. At least then, we could figure out what to do next. After nearly 45 minutes of me prying and him hesitating, he finally broke down and admitted something I never saw coming. About 10 years ago, when we were still in our early 20s, he'd gotten drunk one night and slept with another woman. He started crying as he confessed, saying it was the biggest regret of his life. He told me that the moment it happened, he knew it was a mistake. He didn't even stay the night. He just left. He said he'd been terrified of me finding out, terrified of losing me. I felt this knot form in my stomach. I remember the girl. She was someone he'd been friendly with, someone they both hung out with in the same social circle. She had just moved to our small town for work, and while I didn't know her well, I knew they'd been talking for a little while, maybe a few weeks. It wasn't some random hookup, but a situation where there was attraction before things escalated. He couldn't remember all the details, like who initiated it, or if there were texts exchanged and deleted. But he said after that night, they never spoke again. She got fired from her job soon after, and then she moved away. The whole thing is hard to wrap my head around. He's been so adamant that nothing else has ever happened, but I can't help but feel, I don't know, betrayed. He didn't tell me. When I asked him about this girl years ago when they were still hanging out, he assured me nothing had ever happened. He even reassured me again when I asked about it 7 years ago, though I noticed a strange tension in his voice back then. But I convinced myself I was just being paranoid. I never expected him to eventually admit they'd slept together. Right now, I feel numb. It's like everything I knew is being questioned, and I don't know how to process it. I'm so confused. I don't have a lot of support here. My relationship with my dad is non-existent, and my mom is in a nursing home because of health problems. A friend of mine offered to let me stay at her place while I figure things out, but she's gone for work for weeks at a time, and I don't think I could handle being alone in her house right now. Going back to my hometown isn't an option either. I just need space to think. What really hurts, though, is that Mike never told me. If it had been a recent thing, I don't think I could stay with him, but this happened so long ago, and we've built a life together since then. We've got 2 dogs, a cat, and I have my horses on our little farm. He even bought me my own cow a few years ago. We're living a life I never imagined I would have, and I thought it was built on trust. I never expected him to keep this secret for so long. Now, I just need to figure out what to do. I know I need time. He's reassured me nothing else has ever happened, and I want to believe him. But a part of me can't shake the feeling that there's more to this story than he's letting on. Has anyone else been through something like this? I feel lost right now, and I just don't know what's next for us. Third story. I called out my cousin's hypocrisy about abortion at Thanksgiving dinner. The shocking confrontation that ruined the holiday. Thanksgiving has always been my favorite time of year, a time to gather with family, eat great food, and just enjoy each other's company. But this year, my experience was anything but peaceful. It all started when I went to my cousin Jenna's house for Thanksgiving dinner. Jenna and I have been incredibly close for as long as I can remember. Growing up, we were more like sisters than cousins, sharing everything from childhood secrets to teenage crushes. But over the last few years, things have started to change. Politics has crept its way into our relationship, creating a divide between us that's been harder to bridge with each passing year. And I'm sure you can guess where this is going. It all boiled over at the dinner table. It all started innocently enough, with small talk about food and family. But before long, someone mentioned politics. And of course, the conversation inevitably turned to Trump. I tried to stay quiet, hoping to avoid the usual political clashes that have strained our relationship. But Jenna, emboldened by a few glasses of wine, decided to launch into one of her trademark rants. She started talking about how Trump's pro-life policies were long overdue. She said that abortion should be illegal and that women who choose to have one are, in her words, just looking for a get-out-of-jail-free card. She went on and on about how it was immoral to terminate a pregnancy and how women should take responsibility for their actions. At first, I bit my tongue. I really did. But then it hit me. The hypocrisy in her words was too much to ignore. Jenna had an abortion of her own when she was in college. I was there for her through the whole thing, helping her with the decision and even driving her to the clinic. She had gotten pregnant after a brief fling with someone she didn't even know that well. She told me at the time that she wasn't ready to be a mother. She wanted to finish her degree, get her life together, and only then think about starting a family. At that moment, I supported her decision. I knew how difficult it was for her, but I believed she had the right to make that choice for herself. But now, years later, I was sitting across the table from her, listening to her call for the very rights she once had to be taken away from other women. It was too much. I couldn't stay silent any longer. I looked at her, my heart racing, and asked, "So you think women shouldn't have access to the same choice you had?" I tried to keep my voice steady, but the anger was rising in me. The room went dead silent. Jenna froze for a moment, clearly caught off guard. She stammered a little before quickly trying to justify herself. "Well, my situation was completely different," she said. "I had my reasons. I wasn't just doing it casually like those people who abuse the system." I couldn't believe what I was hearing. So you're saying that because you had your reasons, your abortion was valid, but other women don't deserve that same right? I felt my voice growing louder. You were lucky to have the choice, Jenna. Why would you want to take that away from others? Her face turned bright red. She snapped back, accusing me of trying to humiliate her in front of the family. Why are you bringing up my personal life to shame me? She yelled. I tried to explain that I wasn't trying to shame her. I was just calling out her hypocrisy. But she wouldn't listen. The argument escalated quickly, with her accusing me of not respecting her beliefs and of trying to shame her for the choices she had made. But I couldn't let it go. If you really believe in protecting unborn life, Jenna, then why would you have made the same choice you're condemning now? I countered. If you understand the complexities of that decision in your own life, why can't you extend that same empathy to other women? At that point, things just exploded. The tension in the room was unbearable. People were starting to shift uncomfortably in their seats. Before I could even finish my point, Jenna demanded that I leave her house. She told me that I had ruined Thanksgiving and that I should have kept my mouth shut for the sake of family peace. I was stunned. I had gone there expecting a quiet dinner with family, not a confrontation like this. But I couldn't just sit there and let her get away with her hypocrisy. So I left, feeling like I had done the right thing, even though I knew it was going to cause a storm. Now, Jenna's family is furious with me. They say I ruined the holiday and should have let it go. My parents are upset too, saying I should have picked a better time to discuss it. But how could I? How could I sit there and not say anything when she was spouting off about something so personal, so important, and so hypocritical? I still can't shake the feeling that I did the right thing. Jenna benefited from the same reproductive rights that she now wants to take away from other women. And I couldn't just sit back and let her get away with it. But the fallout from that night has been intense. And now I'm wondering if I was wrong to call her out in the way that I did. So, what do you think? Am I the asshole for calling out my cousin's hypocrisy about abortion at Thanksgiving?